So yeah, no, my dad did go on about communism, but he didn't talk about much. I found that with Ukrainians when I'd ask them questions, they don't really like to tell you exactly what's gone on. It's only little snippets I've sort of managed to get over years. I know some really horrific stuff did happen in that period that just to them all, but it were a really horrific period, and I can imagine a lot of them people who come over, they'll have been traumatized, won't they? Because that World War II period and the lead up to it, because I suppose my granddad, he'll have lived through Holodomor and all that type of stuff.
Prove to me that you are alive.
I'm hitting record and we are recording. What up, everybody? Welcome to the Prove to Me that You're Alive LiteCast, the only show in the world that challenges your perception on reality and life and gives you a mental kick in your spiritual gut so you can start gasping for air of information with brand new enthusiasm, just like you did when you were a little kid. My today's guest, now, David, if you will please allow me, man, before I introduce you, I have to say something. If you allow me a couple seconds. See, when the concept for Prove to Me that You're Alive came about, it was back in 2001. And, before like anyone knew about podcasts or anything like that, I wanted to have some sort of a show where I could talk to super interesting people, man. Interesting people with their worldly point of views and someone that had something to offer to all of us, man. And today's guest is that sort of a individual, a family to the NazareN channel, uh, a super dope brother, man, a super interesting human being, a very beautiful hearted person, man. And I feel so honored, man, to introduce to all of you my brother Dave, man. What's up, Dave?
Yeah, I don't know what to say to all that, mate.
You can say what's up, man.
Yeah, mate, good. No, glad to be on. Really happy to be on.
Yeah, man. Thank you for being here, man. And we kicking it, man. This is no different from like, us talking without the recording, man. I just wanted to really express my gratitude to you. I want you and everyone to know it's because of people like you that I get up every day and do this, like I don't I put all my life's chips into this, man, and I do this for us, man. This is for us. So it's such an honor to have you here today, man. I don't know if you want, if you don't want, if you can talk about it, give us a little uh history about you, man. Like where you from, maybe, like
Yes,
where,
I'm from North England, a city called Leeds. That's where I was sort of brought up. Sort of travelled about a little bit. Went and lived in Spain
me that you are alive.
It's more, it's work in England where it's a much better, I think, work-life balance, in Spain. But again, that's from my point of view. I've worked in tourism industry, so
Mhm,
I didn't live how someone would live in mainland Spain, nowhere near tourism. For me, every day was Saturday, if you get what I mean.
mhm.
Uh, because you're constantly partying, you were constantly mucking about. So it's like every day Saturday for 9 years. So yeah, it were a good time, but you've got to go eventually, aren't you? And so
Mhm. Yeah,
get
sounds crazy, man. Being a young man, traveling, you're networking with people all the time, man, because you got to get, those sales and everything. You're making connections, man. Like, it sounds crazy, bro.
yeah,
Sounds
no, it was
fun.
good. They were interesting times, especially because of the people who you meet in them sort of settings. That's what makes that time so good. It's people I met sort of along the way, because especially people who did my type of job. There were a lot of them were not all of them, but a good chunk of them. They were all absolutely wild, and because everyone were earning loads of money, and you're in a tourist environment, there was plenty of opportunity for you to be wild. Do you know what I mean?
Mhm.
So it was just real, real fun times. But yeah, yeah, it had to come to an end. It's just one of them. It's past, isn't it?
This is what I'm wondering about you. And if you want it, we can, whatever, you can not answer or we can delete it later or whatever. But this is what I'm really wondering about you. And like, it's very interesting to me because, and again, we can delete it later because from what I know, your heritage is Slavic Ukrainian. So what I wanted to know is, um, like, what generation are you, and how was that growing up? Was that constantly in your life? Because the reason I'm asking is because the people that left abroad, they left, the first generation left like after World War II, and it was mainly people from Western Ukraine, which are very pro-nationalistic, and they brought like this whole nationalistic side of them, to UK and US and Canada. So what is, like, if you can talk about it again, we can delete it later if
No,
anything, like,
no, I don't mind talking about it.
yeah,
So
yeah.
yeah, we were really brought up. My dad were ultra nationalistic, but at the same time, my dad were a Jehovah's Witness, so he had to try and calm it down with that type of stuff. If it weren't for the fact that my dad become a Jehovah's Witness, he would have been super active in it in England, in Ukrainian community, because when it were a community for them who come over after the Second World War, especially I think because for a lot of these people, they just lived through the pure horror of World War II together. So then to get to England, they all stuck together and created the little community. And I can imagine at one point it were absolutely amazing for them because they all had each other, and England wasn't that much of a bad place to live at that time. They ended up doing pretty well for themselves.
Mhm.
So my dad were really heavily involved in that growing up because of it. His dad was, and my grandmother. They were like really involved in the local community centre, for Ukrainian club.
So wait, so was it your dad's parents that came
Y-
over after World War II?
Yeah, my dad's parents, yeah.
Okay. Do you know if they are in fact from Western Ukraine or they're
Oh
from
no, I know
somewhere else?
exactly where they're from. I've got family there who I'm still in touch with. So my granddad, he's from a village near Zolochiv. It's called Spekulosy. It's
Okay.
just like a little village. So I've been there. I've been there twice. I love that family. The like proper family to me. Like my cousins in England and my brothers and sisters. The proper family to me. We went there in 1992. So my dad bought a big, massive American camper van. 1992, as soon as he could, we all went with him, me and my brothers and my sisters and my mum, and we drove over to Ukraine. Went to village, went to Lviv first. We spent about a week there, and then we went to a village where my granddad come from, which is near Zolochiv.
Solitude. Mhm.
It's about, I don't know, about.
Bro, I know exactly what that is, man. I've been to Solitude, bro.
Yeah, yeah. I'm just saying the village, the Spekulosy, it's about, I don't know, 30 minutes drive south of there. But yeah, no, he's got so back in that village. My granddad's brother was still alive when we went in 1992, and his sons and daughter, and my granddad's sister were there as well. She was still alive. In village. She lived in another house, but in the same village, and it was amazing going back there, mate. Especially coming from where we'd come from in England, because we
Yeah.
just come from a council estate, what you'd call in America like projects. You know, where we didn't see wildlife and not like because the estate I got brought up, it's pretty much just on like edge at city centre, so we're
Mhm.
surrounded by houses. So for us going there to Ukraine, it was like going in a time warp to like 70 years because
Mhm.
people were still flying around in horse and carts and stuff like that.
Yeah, man.
You know, 'cause it was so close after all communism and that. So it was amazing. So yeah, we went to the village, and then my grandma, she comes from a village down, is it Ivano Frankiv? Just
Ivano
a bit,
from Kyiv. Okay,
yeah, a
so
bit,
yeah, so you're from Western Ukraine. That's where I'm from, bro.
yeah. So yeah, we went to her village, but by the time we got to her village, that she didn't really have any family left. They all got killed.
Wow, I'm sorry to hear that, man.
Yeah, a lot of but on both sides. So my granddad and my grandma, they lost a lot of like family in that period. Like my granddad's dad, he got shot by Russians not long after. Like 1946, he got shot.
Mm,
They basically just took him into a cellar and shot him.
sorry to hear that.
Um, but yeah, so this is the thing. We got brought up ultra nationalistic to this. It was Russians. Everything gets blamed on
Mhm,
Russia. Do you know what
mhm.
I mean? And we didn't hear much. This is the thing. Some of the stuff I've learned. My dad didn't talk about no, and I don't think his dad talked about no. But that's really, really common. I found with Ukrainians. Because
But
a lot they don't talk the Ukrainians who I've met over here, they didn't talk about no because it's that like that old saying, loose lips sink ships, and I think because they come from communism where you
yeah,
couldn't
but
talk.
I'm sorry to interrupt you, Dave, but I wanted to clarify this because I've been clarifying this with some of the Ukrainian old heads right now. And was it that he talked bad about Russians or communists? This is very important, man.
Nah, well, I never met my granddad. My granddad died before I was born. In all
Yeah,
fairness,
but
being honest with you,
your
pardon.
dad, your dad.
No, my dad were Russians. It were Russians.
All Russians.
Yeah,
Okay.
it was Russians and Jews, if I'm being honest with you,
Yeah,
Russians and
yeah,
Jews.
yeah.
But
Listen,
Russians were the main ones, but Jews, he didn't like Jews and for whatever reason. But he'd never go into no detail because, like I say, my dad were, i- in a sense, he was a bit of a conflicted person because he couldn't be exactly who he was because he was a Jehovah's Witness, and he had to, when you become that Christian religion, you sort of got to let go of all that nationalistic stuff
yeah,
because you're a Jehovah's Witness. But it
yeah.
with that ingrained in him, he couldn't help but let it go, if you get what I mean.
So I wanted to clarify this because this is super important, man. And this is what I found out because I think the reason that your dad was talking, whatever, like, and it's not hatred really. It's just we were taught, like, little jokes about Russians, and Russians are this and Russians are that. First of all, I wanted to say a little disclaimer. In Western Ukraine, we don't like anybody. We don't like Jews, we don't like Poles, we don't like we don't like nobody, bro. But I think what happened was that the first generation, the people right after World War II, they hated communists because they hated communism because Western Ukraine didn't want to become part of the Soviet Union. But then the second generation, they confused the communists with the Russians, and they started pointing fingers at the Russians, and it kind of passed on to our generation where I was brought up as a little kid in Ukraine. It was like Russians are bad, Russians are bad. But now when I'm asking about it from the old heads are telling me no, it wasn't Russians, it was communists, man. You see what I'm saying?
Prove to me that you are alive.
Um, so yeah, no, my dad did go on about communism, but he didn't talk about much. I found that with Ukrainians when I'd asked them questions, they don't really like to tell you exactly what's gone on. It's only little snippets I sort of managed to get over years. I know some really horrific stuff did happen in that period, but just to them all. But it were a really horrific period, and I can imagine a lot of them people who come over, they were they'll have been traumatized, won't they? Because that World War II period and the lead up to it, because I suppose my granddad, he'll lived through Holodomor and all that type of stuff.
I'll tell you a little secret, man. And because obviously I'm from Western Ukraine, very ultra nationalistic, but I started to, study everything since I was a little kid. I was really curious about what happened. Can you still
Yeah,
hear me?
yeah. Yeah, I can hear you.
So see, this is the biggest thing. People don't want to admit it. They don't want to talk about it. The biggest communist party in the Soviet Union was in Ukraine. If you
Yeah,
look at almost every communist leader, they were all had heritage back to Ukraine, from
yeah,
Khrushchev to Chernenko to Gorbachev, to they were all actually, heritage to Ukrainians. So what happened was, because there was the biggest communist party in Ukraine, is what happened was the actual communists NKVD that served in the Soviet Ukraine, they were the ones that were torturing and selling out their own people.
yeah,
Holodomor happened because neighbor used to snitch on a neighbor to the NKVD, which was a local NKVD, and the NKVD soldier would come and would seize the food. So this is what I really want people to understand. It wasn't like, because now we're painted this picture like, oh, these Russian soldiers, like no one was coming over from Russia. They were all local people, man. Russia
yeah,
had their own communist party. They had their own shit going on in Soviet Russia, and we had our own shit going on in the Soviet Ukraine. And then when the West started creeping into Ukraine more, right before the fall of the Soviet Union, they put it into our heads that it was all the Russians. While
yeah,
I started doing the research, I'm like, this shit don't make sense. Russians, like, they weren't even over there. It was all Ukrainians. Ukrainians were doing this to themselves, bro. This is why
yeah,
it's so freaking sad. You understand? But
yeah.
but I wanted to ask you this, man. How important was it to you personally growing up? Like, did you have a sense like, oh, I'm Ukrainian or I'm Slavic or whatever? Or were you
No,
like,
yeah. So it were pop ingrained in us to us by our dad, but we were Ukrainian, and especially like our surname, he'd be like, he'd always bring it up that you should be proud of your surname, you get to carry our line and all that type of stuff. He were big on it, and especially because we went to Ukraine a couple of times. My dad went a few times, and we did used to go to Ukrainian club. My dad wouldn't let us go to Ukrainian school on a Saturday, because it were based on, what's you call it, Christianity, but that
Mhm.
other word, Orthodoxy. It were done by Orthodoxy Church, so we want to let it go because we've got brought up Jehovah's Witness. But we used to go down to like summer camp as well. They do like a summer camp out here. They've done it for like 60, 70 years or something,
Oh
where
wow.
all Ukrainians send, all the kids to go to like traditional like summer camp for Ukraine,
Yeah.
traditional stuff.
It's the same here, man. It's the same
Yeah,
here.
yeah, yeah, yeah.
How
That's
how
nice.
big how big is the Ukrainian diaspora, like where you're from, man?
Well, to be fair, when before the war kicked off, I know for definite like the working with the like Ukrainian club, which is local to me, Leeds, that were only open like twice a year, but 3 times a year, for like Christmas and that,
Mhm.
and I think for Easter. But since then, it's packed out non-stop. Then there's quite a few Ukrainians knocking about because I can tell when I hear them speaking and they're speaking Ukrainian. There's just quite a few, especially since war's kicked off. There's quite a few over here now. But
Mhm.
the one back before, the generation sort of like the the sort of second generation, they all forgot about Ukraine in general.
Yeah.
Because all like I say, all the like clubs, they were all closing down. Loads of them's closed down already. They
The stuff about Russians were was put into our heads, but it's even more than that. Um there were really detailed work done on the minds of the masses. This is not a new occurrence. A lot of people think, well, um CIA and MI6 and all of this, they were working on the Ukrainian propaganda for the last 30 years. They've been working on it for the last 100 years. It's been around for 100 years. It all started in Austria-Hungary, and it really picked up because, while it was still the Soviet Union kind of got a grip back on the propaganda. But then right before of the fall of Soviet Union, all of this started back up in the 80s and the mid 80s.
Prove to me that you are alive.